Welcome back to the Williams Real Estate channel. Today we are running through the step-by-step process to buy an investment property. So to kick it off, you will need to initially stack your cash. Typically 10% deposit is the minimum unless you can get on one of the latest schemes that the governments are running. If you're a first-home buyer, you may be able to get a 5% deposit or even potentially less. Do your research. If it applies to you, get on that, but typically 10% is the minimum. If you go with 10%, most banks will require lender's mortgage insurance to be taken out. If you go 20% deposit, then no LMI. And then roughly about 7% for closing costs. So this will include stamp duty, buyer's agent costs, conveyancing costs, custom building, and if applicable, a strata inspector if you are buying a property within a strata scheme, so a unit in a complex. It's also a good idea to get a inspector to run a report and check out the ins and outs of the strata scheme. Also note that there may be other costs required for a town planner and solicitor costs if need be, so it's always a good idea to have a cash buffer and not sail by the wind. But in saying that, 17% of the purchase price of a property, we can get it done. You may look to even recycle equity out of an existing asset like your family home or another investment property. This is by recycling equity. You do this by ordering a valuation of the property and then taking out an 80% loan of the new valuation. So for example, if a property is valued at 600,000 and it has an existing loan of only 400,000, you can then borrow an extra 80,000 against that property up to 80%, provided you have the servicing. So then you can increase the loan on that property. The bank will debit you the cash and you can use that equity, being the cash, to then use as the closing costs, the deposit and closing costs for your investment property. So this is the strategy I use to build out my portfolio. I basically leverage one to the next, and wherever the equity builds up now over time, I then refinance, pull out the equity, and then keep rolling that equity throughout the next deals. The next step would be to, once you have your cash ready, is to then get a mortgage pre-approved. You can either do this by going to your local bank branch or using a mortgage broker. Personally, I bought the first 7 or 8 properties just going into the Commonwealth Bank branch. I then got to a point where the bank wouldn't even talk to me anymore because it became all too hard. So then I had to use mortgage brokers to get me financed to keep moving forward. So depending where you are, if you're starting out, it can be easy enough just to walk into your local branch, see how much they'll lend you. You'll have to provide pay slips and your monthly costs and these types of things so they can calculate your borrowing capacity. Or if you've got a couple of assets behind you, it may be a better option to use a mortgage broker because they have better connections and they can obviously help you a lot and do a lot of the grunt work for you to get your pre-approval. Pre-approvals last typically 3 months. So you need to get that and obviously your cash deposit ready to go. And then once you have that, then you are pretty much ready to get going. So the next step would be to, if you're watching this, engage us. So personally, I've got 13 properties currently across New South Wales and Queensland, total portfolio worth about 5 million, started from scratch in 2017. Out of the 13 properties, I'm going to start developing probably half of them in the next few years as the market is really starting to move hot. This is I do a buy and hold and build to rent strategy, but basically the same model that the big developers use, such as the Meritons, Land Leases, Multiplex, Mirvacs. These big guys, they buy sites when in the slumps, so in like the COVIDs and the GFCs, in the dot-com bust. They buy up then, they sit on sites for a good 5 to 10 years, and then wait until the market moves, the values stack up, then they start building. So a lot of developers are going to start building now in the next few years. So this is the same strategy that I replicate, obviously on a smaller scale because I started from scratch, but buy and hold and build to rent strategy for the long term, and then ultimately live off the surplus cash flow that the portfolio generates. So I have developed my strategy based off following a lot of investors, studying a lot of books, but also studying how the big corporations work, as I've got over 13 years of construction and real estate experience with large public and private organizations. So if you come on with us, you can leverage my experience of what to do, what not to do to save you time and costly mistakes, to ultimately fast track your wealth building journey and become part of the 1% of Australians who own 6+ investment properties and achieve financial freedom through property investment. Once you engage us, we will then go through and do a strategy session. This is a 2-hour session that we do online. I'll have all these strategy session slideshows to really nut out and explain the fundamentals, how to build a portfolio first. We'll then go through the pros and cons of different types of properties, including units versus villas versus townhouses versus a house versus a block of units. So everything works well depending where you are. You just need to understand the pros and cons and when to actually select which asset at what time. We'll run through the acquisition process, property management, and adding value. By the end of the strategy session, we'll have a set, clear plan and a strategy that is established based off your financial position, your skill set, and your risk profile, and obviously your goals, what you're trying to achieve in the time frame. Post the strategy session, I then get out in the field and start searching for the property that we specifically narrow down and understand based off the strategy session. I'll then provide lots of options. I don't set a number on how many options I provide, but typically I provide 3 at any time, and then we run through the pros and cons of different options currently. The deals come up and they go like hotcakes, because ultimately the ones that I pick up are under bank value, under what the RPDA reports have. So deals don't last long. So when people come to me and they're ready to go, I make sure that they have to be ready to go and ready to pull the trigger within a week or two, because otherwise you just sort of go around circles. We need to be able to, once you're ready, once you've done the strategy session, once you're clear on your plan and what you want to acquire, then I'll present properties and you got to pull the trigger straight away, because give it a week or two and they're gone. The good deals don't last forever, hence why they're good deals. So we do that. We'll source the properties, and then we also run through over the phone, talk through the different options for them. Once you select the property, we then negotiate the purchase price and the terms of the contract under your instructions. You'll then also need to engage a conveyancer to review the contract, provide you any legal advice, conduct property searches, and coordinate the settlement. You would also then need to engage a building and pest inspector. So I provide guidance and support through this whole process as well. So we get a building inspector to inspect the property structure, and if it's got any termites or pests, they can then provide you advice on, if it does have any issues, what the cost would be to maintain or fix that. You can then decide whether or not to keep proceeding with that property, or even, I like it, the strategy, if there is something wrong with it, where you can go back and renegotiate the purchase price further down. And then if it is a unit in a complex, you also have to engage a strata inspector. They research and provide a report of the property, including the strata fees, property maintenance that is being managed by the strata company, the insurance, and the balance sheet of the property. So how much money is sitting on the balance sheet and that they have collected through the strata fee. So ideally, you want to make sure that that has a healthy balance sheet and that they're not in deficit or have a loan to maintain the building. So that is for strata. If you're buying a block of units or a house that's on one title and you're buying the whole site, then you don't need to do this. This is only when you're tied up into a strata scheme with other owners within the property. Settlement, and then you're there. Coordinated by the conveyancer, they will coordinate with the bank, mortgage broker, vendor, the agent to arrange settlement. Post-settlement will then help you set up your property management. Depending where you're buying, if you're buying in an area that I already personally have property in, I can put you in contact with the agents I already deal with. But if not, I can support you to set up your property managers. They help you to list the property for rent if it doesn't have a tenant already. They screen the tenants, they conduct inspections of the property, they provide recommendations of what tenant to go ahead with. They collect rent, issue monthly statements, issue an annual statement for tax purposes, and they also manage any maintenance requirements. I've used property managers to even do renovations, so to do a whole new kitchens and bathrooms and stuff. So they are like project managers. They are worth their weight in gold, and they are a necessity to build a portfolio and scale. It's like building a business. When you want to build a portfolio, you need resources, and property managers are the key to allow you to build a sustainable long-term property portfolio, especially when you're buying properties interstate. You need property managers. Do not do it yourself, is my recommendation. Whenever you hear the horror stories of tenants gone rogue, 9 times out of 10 is because they have been managing it themselves. So property managers are the key to build a sustainable portfolio. Disclaimer, this is by no means financial advice. I operate as a buyer's agent. If you are looking to buy an investment property and build a portfolio, hit me up. I'm happy to chat any day of the week to discuss your goals and our services in more detail of what we can provide. I'm not as I said, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a property advisor. This is all general information only. Take it with a grain of salt. I am just doing my own strategy based off my experience. And if that resonates with you, I'm happy to help you in any way from a buyer's agent perspective. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.